You need to stop calling me Dad. I'm busy, okay? Please, just stop. That was the last voicemail she left me before the silence began. My name is Richard Collins, 72, from Portland, Oregon. I must have replayed that message 100 times, even though every word cut deeper each time. I never imagined I'd live long enough to be told by my own daughter that my voice was a burden. For a week after that call, I tried to convince myself she was just tired. People say things they don't mean. I told myself she'd call back once she cooled off. She didn't. Every morning, I sat at the same kitchen table, coffee cooling by my hand, staring at my phone. I'd press the button just to see the screen light up. No missed calls, no messages. Just a reflection of a man waiting for something that wasn't coming. The house was too quiet. It used to echo with laughter, hers, mostly. Emily had the kind of laugh that made you forget your worries. When she was a child, I'd do anything to hear it. I'd trip over my own feet, drop a spoon on purpose, just to see her giggle until her cheeks turned red. But now that same girl wouldn't pick up the phone. I started leaving voicemails, gentle ones. Hey, sweetheart, it's me. Just checking in. Hope you're okay. Then, a few days later, it's been a while. Just wanted to hear your voice, that's all. By the 10th one, I could hear my own desperation. I stopped calling after that, not because I didn't want to, because I couldn't bear the silence that followed. There's a kind of quiet that feels like punishment. At night, I'd sit by the window with the light on, the way I used to when she was a teenager out past curfew. Grace, my late wife, would tell me to trust her. She'll come home, she'd say. And she always did. Until now. One evening, I scrolled through old photos on my phone, birthdays, graduations, her wedding day. In one picture, she's hugging me, eyes closed, face buried against my shoulder. You can almost hear her saying, "I love you, Dad." I whispered to that photo, "What happened to that little girl, Em?" Silence filled the room like a second heartbeat. The next morning, I took out a sheet of paper and began to write. I didn't know what it would become. A letter, a goodbye, maybe both. My handwriting was slower now, a little shaky, but the words came from somewhere deep. I wrote about her mother, about the way Grace used to hum in the kitchen, about how proud I was when Emily got her first job. I told her I missed her, but I didn't want her to feel guilty. I just wanted her to remember that no matter what she thought of me, I'd always be here. Halfway through, I stopped. My hand trembled. What if she never read it? I folded the page and placed it beside my phone, under a photograph of the three of us. The paper waited there for days, like I was waiting for permission to finish it. Every night, I'd think, tomorrow. I'll call her tomorrow. And every morning, I'd find another reason not to. When you've spent a lifetime building a relationship, you never expect silence to be what finishes it. But that's what happened to me. I remember the sound of her laugh more clearly than my own heartbeat. It used to come from the backyard, right behind the maple tree where Grace had planted her rose bushes. Emily would chase after the dog, her small hands covered in dirt, hair sticking to her face. She'd run toward me shouting, "Daddy, look, I made a castle." It was never more than a pile of sand and twigs, but I'd kneel beside her like she'd built a kingdom. That laugh, it was everything. Now, the house is quiet enough that I can hear the refrigerator hum. Even the clock on the wall sounds louder, ticking through the hours she never calls. I sit in the same chair every morning, drinking coffee that's gone cold before I finish it. It's strange how habits stay when people don't. Sometimes I pick up my phone, just to scroll through old voicemails. There's one from 3 years ago, her birthday message to me. "Hey, old man," she'd said, laughing. "I got you a new sweater because you refused to buy one yourself. Love you, see you soon." I didn't delete it. I couldn't. It's the last time she said "love you." I try to remember where things went wrong. Maybe it started when I couldn't help her with the down payment for that house. Or maybe when I forgot her anniversary one year, something she said didn't matter. But maybe it did. Sometimes, distance doesn't happen all at once. It sneaks in between small disappointments until silence feels normal. A few weeks ago, I found one of her old drawings in the attic. It was a picture of our family. Stick figures, sun, flowers. Above it, in her crooked handwriting, it said, "Me and Mommy and Daddy forever." I held that paper like it was made of glass. I thought about the day she left for college. Grace cried all morning. I tried to act tough, joking about how peaceful the house would finally be. But when Emily hugged me at the door, she whispered, "Don't get lonely without me, okay?" I promised her I wouldn't, and for a while, I didn't. She called every Sunday. She'd tell me about classes, about friends, about a boy she liked. Even after Grace passed, she tried to stay close. But then her job came, her marriage, her life. And I just became one of those things she meant to get back to. I don't blame her for living her life. I raised her to chase it. But I thought there'd always be room for me in it. I visited her once last spring, unannounced. I knocked, and she opened the door just a few inches. "Dad, you can't just show up like this," she said, voice low, glancing over her shoulder. "It's not a good time." I told her I just wanted to drop off the photo album her mother made. She said, "You could have mailed it." That night, I sat in my car across the street from her house, watching the light in her kitchen window flicker. I told myself she'd come out. She didn't. Now, every time I walk past Grace's rose bushes, I whisper, "She's doing fine, honey. She just doesn't have time right now." The wind moves through the branches, and for a second, it sounds like her laugh again. Then it's gone. I went back inside and unfolded that unfinished letter on my desk. I added one line before folding it again. I still believe she'll remember who we were. The room held its breath. The drive took me almost an hour, even though her house was only 20 miles away. I knew I didn't have a reason to go, not one she'd accept anyway. But I told myself maybe if she saw me, just saw me, something would soften. The rain had just stopped when I reached the gates. Her new neighborhood was one of those neatly planned ones with matching lawns, curved driveways, and a guard station that looked more like an office lobby than security. The man at the gate stepped out and leaned toward my window. "Can I help you, sir?" "Yes," I said quietly. "I'm here to see my daughter, Emily Hayes." He frowned at the clipboard in his hand. "Do you have an appointment?" "An appointment?" I smiled faintly. "No, I'm her father." He hesitated, then picked up the phone. After a short call, he came back shaking his head. "Mrs. Hayes isn't expecting visitors," he said carefully. "She's asked that no one be let through without notice." I nodded slowly. I could tell by his face that she'd told him exactly who I was. "It's fine," I said. "Could you just give her this?" I held out a small white envelope, the same one I'd been rewriting for weeks. He looked at it uncertainly, then took it with a polite nod. "Thank you," I whispered, pulling away. I didn't even reach the end of the street before my phone buzzed. A message. I felt a strange rush of hope before opening it. It was from her. "Dad, please don't come here again. You're making things uncomfortable. That was all. No greeting, no goodbye. Just that. I pulled over by the curb and sat there for a while, hands trembling on the steering wheel. I didn't cry. I just stared out the windshield at the manicured hedges, the clean sidewalks, the kind of neighborhood I once dreamed of giving her. That dream was hers now, without me in it. When I got home that evening, the envelope was sitting in my mailbox, returned and unopened. No note, no explanation. Just my own handwriting staring back at me. I brought it inside, wiped the rain off, and placed it gently on the table beside Grace's framed photo. I tried to smile for her. "She's fine," I said softly. "She's just busy." The house didn't believe me any more than I did. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and opened the envelope myself. I read the words I'd written to her over and over. They felt smaller than they did when I first wrote them. Powerless. I folded the paper again, sealed it, and pressed it against my chest. "She'll read it one day," I whispered. The rain started again, tapping gently against the window. For some reason, it sounded almost like forgiveness. The morning I collapsed, I thought it was just fatigue. I'd been skipping meals, sleeping odd hours, living off old habits and quiet routines. One moment I was making tea. The next, I was on the kitchen floor staring up at the ceiling fan, listening to it hum like nothing had happened. The nurse at the hospital told me I was lucky someone had found me. My neighbor, Mrs. Turner, said she'd noticed the lights still on after midnight. She thought I'd fallen asleep watching television again. I guess that's how most people imagine old men end up, half awake, half forgotten. The doctor came in later that morning. Young man, kind eyes, steady hands. "Mr. Collins," he said gently, "you've had a minor cardiac event. Nothing catastrophic, but it's a warning." "A warning," I repeated, like I hadn't already spent months hearing one in my daughter's silence. He smiled faintly. "You'll need to rest. No stress, no driving, and try not to overthink." "Overthink," I said quietly. "That's all I seem to do these days." He gave me a look I've seen 100 times, that mix of pity and professional detachment. I told him I didn't have anyone to call, and he didn't ask why. He just nodded, scribbled a note, and told me to take care of myself. When I came home, the house felt heavier. Every sound echoed longer than it should have. I sat in my recliner, the one Grace picked out 30 years ago, and stared at the table. The returned envelope was still there, unopened, waiting, like me. I picked it up, felt the soft crease where the paper had begun to wear. Then I took out a new sheet and started again. "Emily," I wrote, "I know you don't want to hear from me, but I want you to know I understand. Life gets loud. People change. Maybe I wasn't the father you needed me to be." I paused. My hands shook. I took a breath. "But you should know that your mother loved you more than anything. Every night before she slept, she'd whisper your name, even when she couldn't remember mine anymore." The words blurred as I wrote them. My eyes watered, but I kept going. When she passed, she asked me to promise one thing: to always keep your place here, in this house, in my heart, no matter what. I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out Grace's wedding ring. I pressed it flat against the paper, leaving a small indentation. Then I folded the page, sealed it in the same envelope, and wrote her name again on the front. I looked at it for a long time. It wasn't an apology or a plea. It was just the truth. That night, I placed the letter inside a small tin box with a few photographs and an old key. Then I slipped the box into my coat pocket next to my heart. "I'll deliver it myself," I whispered. One last time. The clock ticked softly in the silence. I didn't sleep that night. The rain came down steady, washing the streets clean while I sat by the window, holding that envelope like it was alive. I ran my thumb across her name, Emily Hayes, in my own trembling handwriting. It looked almost foreign now. There was a time when I used to write it on birthday cards, school forms, and college checks. Now it sat on a letter she might never open. At around 3 in the morning, I switched on the lamp and unfolded the paper again. I read the words slowly, out loud this time. My voice sounded smaller in the quiet. "Emily," I began, "I don't know when you'll read this. Maybe when I'm gone. Maybe never. But if this reaches you, I want you to know I never stopped being proud of you." I stopped there, the lump in my throat too heavy to speak through. I looked around the room, photographs everywhere. Emily on her first bike, Emily at prom, Emily and Grace at her wedding. My whole life, framed and frozen in moments where I still mattered. I went back to the letter. "When your mother got sick, I didn't tell you everything. I didn't want you to worry, and maybe that was a mistake. The night before she passed, she made me promise something. She said, 'Don't let her forget she's loved.'" My hand hesitated over the next sentence. I think I failed that promise. The words hurt more than I expected. I pressed the pen down harder, leaving small tears in the paper. Then I continued. "But you should know, Emily, that every good thing I ever did, I did for you. Every late night at work, every missed vacation, every sacrifice, it wasn't duty, it was love. I wanted to make your life easier than mine ever was." The rain tapped against the glass, soft and rhythmic. "I know you think I embarrassed you sometimes. Maybe I did. Maybe I was clumsy with words or showed up when I shouldn't have. But you were all I had left after your mother. I didn't know how to be anyone else but your dad." I paused, letting the air settle. Then I wrote the last line I knew I'd never be able to say in person. "When I'm gone, open the drawer in my old desk. There's something there I built for you, and it's always been in your name." I signed it simply, Dad. Then I took Grace's ring from the nightstand and slipped it into the envelope before sealing it shut. The sound of that seal sticking was heavier than any goodbye. I looked out the window once more. The first light of dawn was breaking over the rooftops. Portland looked gray and quiet, the way it always does before a storm clears for good. I whispered into the still air, "She'll understand, Grace. Maybe not now, but she will." Silence filled the room like a second heartbeat. The day I decided to deliver the letter, the sky was the color of old paper. Gray, thin, fragile. It wasn't raining yet, but the air had that heaviness that tells you it's coming. I dressed slowly, buttoning my shirt one piece at a time, the way Grace used to remind me to do before we went anywhere important. I slipped the letter into the inner pocket of my coat. I could feel the slight weight of her ring inside, pressing softly against my chest. The drive to Emily's neighborhood felt longer this time. Maybe because I knew this would be my last trip there. I didn't play the radio. I just listened to the hum of the engine and the quiet whisper of the tires against wet pavement. When I reached the gate, the same security guard was there. He didn't recognize me right away, or maybe he pretended not to. Either way, I didn't give him a chance to stop me. "Morning," I said gently, holding up a small brown envelope. "Just need to drop something in the mailbox for my daughter. Won't take a minute." He hesitated, then nodded. Go ahead, sir. Just the mailbox, right? Just the mailbox. I drove up the curved road to her house. Modern, perfect. Everything she'd dreamed of. There were 2 cars parked out front, both sleek and new. I parked a little ways down, where the trees began to hide the view. The world seemed quieter up there. Even the wind held its breath. I stepped out and walked toward her porch. Every step felt like walking across time itself. From her first day of school to her wedding day. To this silent house where I no longer belonged. Her mailbox was white with gold lettering, the kind that says, "I've made it." I brushed away a few raindrops and slipped the envelope inside, careful not to bend it. For a second, my hand lingered there, like part of me wanted to take it back. But I didn't. "Here," I whispered. "This one's for you." As I turned to leave, I saw the porch light flick on, just a faint glow through the glass. My heart jumped, and I froze. I half expected the door to open, to hear her voice calling out, "Dad?" But it didn't happen. The light just stayed on, steady and cold, like a silent witness. I stood there for a few seconds longer and smiled to myself. "That's all right," I said softly. "Maybe it's better this way." I walked back to my car. The rain finally began, light at first, then heavier as I drove down the winding road. Through the mirror, I could still see the faint glow of her porch light, fading smaller and smaller behind me. When I got home, I hung my coat over the chair and sat by the window, watching the rain come down. The sound was gentle, almost peaceful. I touched my chest where the letter used to be. It felt strangely empty, but lighter somehow. "She'll read it when she's ready," I whispered. "That's enough." The clock ticked softly. The world went quiet. The days after I delivered the letter felt slower, stretched out like they were waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. The phone stayed silent. The mailbox stayed empty. The world, it seemed, didn't notice that one old man had finally said everything he'd been holding inside. Every morning, I made my coffee and sat by the window. Same routine, same view. A line of gray sky, a cracked driveway, and the maple tree that Grace used to hang lights on during the holidays. I'd watch the wind move through it and think about how time keeps going whether you're ready or not. Sometimes I'd imagine her reading it. Emily, sitting on that perfect couch of hers, opening the letter without knowing what was inside. Maybe she'd be angry at first, maybe sad. But maybe, just maybe, she'd understand. That thought was enough to keep me going. The nurse at the clinic called once to remind me about a follow-up. I told her I'd be fine. She paused for a moment before saying, "You sound lonely, Mr. Collins." I laughed a little. "Lonely's just another word for remembering," I said. At night, I'd turn on the porch light, habit really. Grace used to do it every evening, saying, "A light should always guide you home." I told myself I wasn't waiting for anyone, but I still found my eyes drifting to the road. The days blurred together. One afternoon, I found myself sitting at the old piano in the corner of the living room. I hadn't touched it in years. Emily used to play it when she was little, 2 fingers at a time, stumbling through Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I tried to play it now, but my hands shook too much. The sound came out crooked and weak, like an echo of what used to be. That night, I took Grace's shawl from the armchair and folded it neatly over the backrest. I imagined her voice saying, "She'll come around, Richard. Give her time." I whispered back, "Time's all I've been giving Grace." One morning, a week later, I opened the curtains and saw the mailbox flag raised. My heart jumped, but it wasn't her. Just bills. I smiled anyway. False alarm, I said to the empty room. Guess the universe likes teasing me. But that night, I dreamed of her. She was standing by the door, her face softer than I remembered, holding the letter in her hands. She didn't say anything. She just smiled through tears. When I woke up, I wasn't sad. Just still. I took a pen and wrote one last thing in my notebook before going to bed. A single line. She'll understand when she reads it. I closed the book, placed it on the table beside my chair, and turned off the light. The room felt peaceful. Finally. The kind of peace that doesn't come from getting answers, but from knowing you said what you needed to say. The porch light stayed on. She found the letter 3 weeks after I was gone. At least, that's what the neighbor told me she saw. Emily sitting on the porch steps, hair unkempt, the envelope torn open in her shaking hands. The porch light was still on, even though it was daylight. I like to think Grace would have smiled at that. By then, I wasn't around to explain anything. The house was quiet, sold, boxed up. My things had been given away or packed into storage. But the letter, that stayed. It had waited for her, the same way I always had. Sometimes I imagine the moment she realized what it really was. Not a goodbye, not a plea for guilt, but a father's last attempt to remind his daughter that love doesn't stop, even when everything else does. She probably read it twice, maybe 3 times. She would have seen her mother's ring fall out, still polished, still warm from the hand that carried it through decades of living. She might have remembered that the ring used to slide loose on Grace's finger when she cooked, and how she'd laugh and say, "It's all the butter, Rich. I'm shrinking." Maybe Emily smiled at that memory before the tears came. I don't know if she ever went to the desk, the one I mentioned in the letter. Inside the drawer, beneath the lining, there was a small deed with her name already written on it. The house she grew up in was hers now, quietly, without ceremony. It always was. I never told her because I wanted her to feel free, not burdened. Freedom. That was all I ever wanted for her. The way I see it now, love isn't about being needed, it's about being remembered. And if she remembers me, even for a moment when she looks at that ring or steps into that house, then I've done my part. I don't need an apology. I don't need her to say she's sorry for the silence or the distance. I just hope she understands that I never stopped waiting. Not for her to call, but for her to forgive herself. That's the part of being a parent no one tells you. Sometimes your greatest act of love is stepping back, quietly, and letting them live with what they've learned. So now that you've heard my story, I'll ask you what I can't ask her. I gave my daughter everything, my time, my work, my home, my heart. You heard how she treated me, and you know what I still feel for her. Tell me, what should I do now? Should I let her live with the memory and stay silent forever? Should I forgive her completely and hope she finds peace? Or should I have told her the truth while I was still here, that I already left everything to her, including my love, because no matter what she did, I still love her.